The morning sun streaming through my apartment window felt almost accusatory as I smoothed down my navy pencil skirt for the third time. I was 24 years old, and I was finally starting a real career position, not another internship or temp job. Secretary at Vitari Holdings. The name had weight in this city, though I was not entirely sure why. I adjusted the hem of my skirt, which fell just above my knee. Professionally appropriate. The white silk blouse was conservative enough, buttoned to a respectable height, and my dark hair was pulled into a neat low bun. My reflection showed exactly what I had intended. Competent, polished, and ready. The subway ride downtown took 40 minutes, giving me plenty of time to review everything I knew about my new employer. Vitari Holdings owned commercial real estate throughout the city, along with several upscale restaurants and what the website vaguely termed import consultancy services. Roman Vitari himself was 32, according to the brief bio I found. Stanford educated, he took over the family business at 28 after his father retired. What the corporate website did not mention, but what I had pieced together from whispered conversations and careful Google searches, was that the Vitari name carried a different kind of weight in certain circles. The kind that made people drop their voices when they spoke it. The kind that meant his buildings never had permit issues, his restaurants never failed health inspections, and his business rivals tended to suddenly relocate to other cities. I should have been more concerned. I should have questioned why the salary was nearly double what other executive assistant positions offered. I should have wondered why 3 previous secretaries had quit within 6 months. But I needed this job. I needed the health insurance, the stability, and the chance to fully pay off my student loans. I needed to prove to myself that I could make it in this city that had chewed up and spit out so many of my college classmates. The Vitari Holdings building occupied an entire block in the financial district. It was all glass and steel, reaching 30 stories into the morning sky. The lobby was marble and chrome with security that rivaled airport TSA. I showed my new employee ID to 3 different checkpoints before reaching the executive elevator that would take me to the 28th floor. My stomach did a small flip as the elevator climbed. First day nerves, nothing more. I had handled difficult bosses before. I could handle Roman Vitari. The executive floor was hushed luxury, thick carpet and muffled footsteps. Original artwork-lined walls painted in tasteful grays and creams. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city sprawling below. My desk sat in an alcove just outside the corner office, positioned so I would have a clear view of anyone approaching while maintaining some privacy. "You must be Nora." A woman in her 50s approached, her burgundy suit impeccable, her smile professional but warm. She said, "I am Patricia, Mr. Vitari's Director of Operations. I will be showing you the ropes this morning before he arrives." I said thank you and set my bag in the desk drawer, taking in the dual monitors, the sleek phone system, and the stack of files already waiting for my attention. I asked what time Mr. Vitari usually gets in. 9:30 precisely, she said. He is never late and never early. You will learn he is very particular about routines. Patricia opened the top file, revealing a detailed calendar. She said, "My primary responsibility is managing his schedule. Everything goes through me. Every meeting, every call, every visitor. He does not like surprises." We spent the next hour reviewing systems and protocols. Mr. Vitari took his coffee black, brought from a specific cafe 2 blocks away each morning. He preferred digital files, but required physical backups of all contracts. His dry cleaning was picked up on Tuesdays and Fridays. Lunch meetings were scheduled for 1 o'clock, never earlier, never later. Personal calls were transferred to his private line without screening. "The most important thing," Patricia said, lowering her voice slightly, "is discretion. Mr. Vitari's business often involves sensitive information. What you see and what you hear stays in this office always." I nodded, filing away the warning. At 9:25, Patricia straightened up, smoothing her already perfect suit. She said he will be here in 5 minutes. She told me to remember that he appreciates efficiency and professionalism above all else. She left, and I found myself alone with my racing pulse. I pulled up his calendar on my computer, familiarizing myself with today's appointments. 10 o'clock, a meeting with the City Planning Commission. 11:30, a call with an architect. 1 o'clock, lunch with someone listed only as VM 3 o'clock, another vague entry for a warehouse inspection. At exactly 9:30, the elevator chimed. I looked up from my computer, schooling my expression into polite professionalism. Roman Vitari stepped into the hallway, and every carefully prepared greeting died in my throat. Photographs had not prepared me. Nothing could have. He was tall, easily 6'2", with a kind of build that came from disciplined gym routines, not vanity. His dark hair was cut precisely, not a strand out of place. His sharp jaw was shadowed with the barest hint of stubble. But it was his eyes that stopped me. They were cold, dark, and intense, missing nothing as they swept the space with the practiced assessment of someone who automatically cataloged every detail and every potential threat. He wore a charcoal suit that had definitely been tailored specifically for him, the fabric moving with fluid precision as he walked. He wore no tie yet. His white shirt was open at the collar, revealing tan skin and the suggestion of muscle beneath. Everything about him radiated controlled power, the kind that did not need to announce itself because everyone already knew. Our eyes met and held. Something electric passed through the air between us, something I could not name, and definitely should not be feeling on my first day of work. I stood, extending my hand with what I hoped was appropriate professional courtesy. I said, "Mr. Vitari, I am Nora Chen, your new secretary. It is a pleasure to meet you." He crossed the space between us in 3 strides, taking my hand in a grip that was firm without being aggressive. His palm was warm, slightly calloused in a way that suggested he did more than push papers. The contact lasted exactly the appropriate amount of time, yet somehow felt both too long and not long enough. "Miss Chen," he said. His voice was deep, with the faintest trace of an accent I could not quite place. He mentioned that Patricia was giving me the orientation. I said, "Yes, sir. I am familiar with your schedule and preferences." His gaze traveled over me then. It was a quick but thorough assessment that felt like a physical touch. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a muscle jumping beneath the skin. When his eyes returned to mine, something had shifted in them, something darker. "Come into my office," he said. It was not a request. He was already moving, expecting me to follow. I grabbed my tablet and a pen, trailing him into the corner office. It was exactly what I had expected. A massive desk positioned to face the windows, giving him both the view and the psychological advantage of having visitors backlit. Built-in shelves held leather-bound books and what looked like ancient artifacts. The art on the walls was original, probably worth more than my annual salary. Everything was ordered and controlled, radiating the same contained power as the man himself. Roman moved to stand behind his desk, but did not sit. Instead, he braced his hands on the polished surface, looking at me with an expression I could not read. He asked, "Who told you to dress like that?" The question was quiet, almost conversational, but I heard the edge beneath it. I blinked, genuinely confused, and said I was sorry. "Your skirt," he said, his eyes dropping to it briefly before returning to my face. "It is inappropriate." Heat flooded my cheeks, equal parts embarrassment and indignation. I looked down at my outfit, which I had selected specifically for its professionalism. The skirt was navy blue, modest in length, paired with a conservative blouse and sensible heels. I told him I did not understand, as this is standard business attire. "For a nightclub, perhaps," he said. His voice remained level, but tension radiated from every line of his body. "Not for my office." Something sparked in my chest then. Not fear, though maybe it should have been. Not quite anger, though that was part of it. Something else. Something that made me lift my chin instead of ducking my head. It made me meet his intense gaze directly instead of looking away. I told him this skirt is well within professional standards. I said, "Mr. Vitari, it is neither too short nor too tight." I kept my voice steady and professional, but I did not back down. I told him if he had specific dress code requirements beyond standard business formal, I would be happy to review them. For a moment, silence filled the office. Roman's eyes narrowed slightly, studying me with renewed intensity. I stood my ground, my heart pounding but refusing to show it. I had dealt with difficult bosses before, men who tried to use their authority to make women uncomfortable. I would not let this job, no matter how much I needed it, turn me into someone who accepted that behavior without question. "You are right," he said quietly. The admission surprised me. The skirt is professional. I apologize. He turned away then, moving to the windows that overlooked the city. With his back to me, some of the tension left his shoulders, though his posture remained rigid. I have high standards for this office, he continued, still not looking at me. Sometimes I am perhaps too particular. I said, understood, sir. I waited, uncertain if I should leave or stay. The moment felt strange, charged with something I did not understand. He turned back, his expression once again controlled and professional. He said my first task was to reschedule his 10 o'clock meeting. Something came up, so I needed to move it to tomorrow at the same time. Then he told me to order lunch for the 1 o'clock meeting, and that Jeeps was the usual choice. I said, of course, making notes on my tablet. I asked if there would be anything else. Not at the moment, he said. He sat down, finally pulling his computer toward him in a clear dismissal, and told me to close the door on my way out. I left, pulling the heavy door shut behind me. Only when I was safely back at my desk did I allow myself to really breathe. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the phone to make the necessary calls. What had just happened? The intensity of his reaction to my completely professional outfit, his sudden apology. The way he had looked at me like I was both a problem and a puzzle he could not quite solve. I should have been upset. I should have been planning my resignation. But instead, I felt oddly energized. That spark I had felt when I challenged him, when I refused to immediately back down, had awakened something in me I had not known was sleeping. The morning passed in a flurry of phone calls and emails. Rescheduling the city planning meeting took 3 calls and some careful diplomacy. Ordering from Jeeps required navigating a host who clearly knew exactly who was calling and who treated the request with reverent attention to detail. I familiarized myself with the filing system, the contact database, and the dozens of small details that would make me efficient in this role. Roman emerged from his office twice, once to grab a file from the cabinet near my desk, his presence filling the space even though he did not speak, once to take a call on his private line. His voice was too low for me to hear the conversation, but his expression darkened with whatever was being said. Each time I felt his eyes on me. Brief glances that should not have meant anything, but somehow felt weighted with the same intensity as that initial confrontation. At 11:15, a delivery arrived, not his dry cleaning or his coffee. It was a large boutique shopping bag with tissue paper and a discreet logo I recognized. It belonged to one of the city's most exclusive women's clothing stores. The delivery woman smiled professionally. She said it was for Miss Chen, courtesy of Mr. Vitari. I signed for it automatically, too shocked to do otherwise. Once alone, I pulled aside the tissue paper to reveal a skirt. It was designer beautiful, in a soft charcoal gray that would coordinate with dozens of blouses. I checked the tag. It was my size exactly. The length was nearly identical to the one I was wearing. A small card nestled in the tissue paper. I opened it to find a single sentence in bold masculine handwriting. It read, "An apology for my poor manners this morning. RV." I stared at the skirt and at the card, trying to process what this meant. He had apologized verbally, then followed it up by buying me expensive clothing that was not actually different from what I had been wearing. Was this a peace offering, a power play, or both? I knew I should return it. I should walk into his office right now and politely decline such an extravagant and inappropriate gift from my brand new employer. But my fingers traced the soft fabric, and I thought about the intensity in his eyes when he had looked at me. I thought about the way something had sparked between us in those charged moments. Instead of returning it, I carefully folded the skirt back into its tissue paper and placed the bag in my desk drawer. I would decide what to do with it later. Right now, I had work to focus on. The 1 o'clock lunch meeting brought 3 men in expensive suits, who all treated me with careful and personal courtesy. They filed into Roman's office, the door closing behind them. Through the heavy wood, I heard only the murmur of voices, nothing distinct. They emerged 90 minutes later, looking satisfied. Whatever business they had conducted had gone well. Roman walked them to the elevator personally, his hand on each man's shoulder in turn, his smile easy and professional. The moment the elevator doors closed, the smile vanished. He returned to his office without looking at me. At 3 o'clock, he emerged in different clothes. The suit jacket was gone, replaced by a black leather jacket. The white shirt was rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle. I noticed the edge of what might be a tattoo on his left wrist. He said he would be out for the rest of the day. He was already moving toward the elevator. He told me to forward any urgent calls to his cell and said everything else could wait until tomorrow. I said, "Of course, Mr. Vitari." I watched him disappear into the elevator, wondering what warehouse inspection actually meant, and wondering if I really wanted to know. The rest of the afternoon was quiet. I organized files, familiarized myself with the various databases and systems, and tried not to think about the skirt in my drawer, or the man who had given it to me. I tried not to think about the way my pulse had jumped when he looked at me, or the strange feeling that everything had just become far more complicated than a simple job. At 5:30, I gathered my things, locked my computer, and headed for the elevator. The building was quieter now, as most employees had already gone for the day. My reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls showed a woman who looked composed, professional, and unremarkable. But I felt different. It felt like something had shifted today. Some door had opened that I was not sure I knew how to close. It felt like I had stepped into a world that was more complex and dangerous than I had understood when I accepted this position. The subway platform was crowded with evening commuters. I found a spot against a pillar, pulling out my phone to mindlessly scroll through news while waiting for the train. A text came through from an unknown number. It read, "Thank you for your professional handling of today's challenges. You did well for your first day, RV." I stared at the message, my heart doing something complicated in my chest. He had my personal number. Of course he did. He probably had access to every detail of my life, background checks and beyond. But the fact that he used it, that he reached out after hours, meant something. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on something safe and professional. I wrote, "Thank you, Mr. Vitari. I look forward to tomorrow." The response came immediately. It said, "Roman, after hours." Call me Roman. The train arrived before I could figure out how to respond to that. I tucked my phone away and stepped into the crowded car, my mind already spinning with questions I probably should not be asking. Questions about my new boss, about the intensity I had felt in his office, and about the way something inside me had responded to his attention in a way that was definitely not professional. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I would establish better boundaries, maintain appropriate distance, and be the perfect professional secretary. Tomorrow, I would return the skirt and politely decline any further personal gestures. But even as I made these promises to myself, I knew I was lying. Because when Roman had looked at me with that intensity, when he challenged me and I challenged him back, I had felt more alive than I had in months. I felt more seen, more present in my own skin. And that feeling, dangerous as it might be, was intoxicating. I wore the gray skirt the next morning. The decision happened almost without conscious thought. I told myself it was practical. The skirt was beautiful, expensive, and would pair perfectly with the cream blouse I planned to wear. I told myself returning it would be awkward and might insult Roman after his apology. I told myself a dozen reasonable justifications that did not quite cover the real truth. I wanted to see how he would react. The subway ride felt longer than yesterday. Anticipation was coiling in my stomach like a spring wound too tight. I had spent half the night replaying our interactions, analyzing every word, every look, the intensity in his eyes when he criticized my outfit, the way his jaw had tightened, the unexpected apology, both verbal and material, and the text message that had shifted our relationship, from purely professional to something less defined. Call me Roman. I had turned those words over in my mind until sleep finally claimed me near dawn. What did it mean? Was it simply a powerful man preferring informality after hours? Or was it something else? An invitation into a space that existed outside the normal employer-employee boundaries. The Vitari Holdings building looked different in the early morning light. More imposing somehow. I arrived 15 minutes early, wanting to be settled before Roman arrived at his precisely 9:30 routine. Patricia was already at her desk on the executive floor when I emerged from the elevator. She said good morning. Her eyes flickered briefly to my skirt, and something that might have been approval crossed her features. She asked for coffee, please. I set my bag at my desk, powering up the computer. I asked if there was anything I should know about today's schedule. She told me Mr. Vitari has a morning meeting with the construction union representatives, and that it could get contentious. She handed me a perfectly prepared cappuccino and added that he asked for me to sit in and take notes. I must have looked surprised because Patricia smiled slightly. She said he does not usually have his secretary attend meetings, but he specifically requested my presence for this one. I considered it a learning opportunity, or perhaps a test. Sipping the coffee, I realized it was a chance to see how I handled pressure, conflict, and the reality of whatever business Roman actually conducted beyond the corporate facade. At 9:28, I heard the elevator chime. My pulse quickened traitorously as Roman stepped into the hallway, and I hated myself a little for the reaction. He wore navy today. The suit jacket was perfectly tailored. The crisp white shirt beneath it was open at the collar in that way that somehow looked both casual and deliberately controlled. His dark hair was slightly damp like he had recently showered, and I caught a hint of his cologne, something expensive with notes of cedar and spice. Our eyes met. His gaze dropped immediately to my skirt, and I watched his expression shift through several emotions too quickly to name. His jaw tightened. His hands, I noticed, clenched briefly at his sides before he consciously relaxed them. Miss Chen, his voice was carefully neutral. "Good morning." "Good morning, Mr. Vitari," I replied. I kept my tone professional, but I did not look away. I did not duck my head or apologize for wearing his gift. I just met his eyes steadily, letting him see that I had made a choice. "The skirt suits you," he said. He moved past me toward his office, and I caught the barest hint of tension in his shoulders. He said the union representatives will be here in 20 minutes and told me to bring my tablet. He disappeared into his office, leaving me alone with my racing heart and the knowledge that something had definitely shifted between us. The skirt was not just clothing anymore. It was a statement, a response to an unspoken question, a piece moved in whatever game we were apparently playing. Patricia appeared at my elbow. She noted that he seemed pleased. I asked if he did, turning to my computer to pull up the necessary files for the meeting. She said Roman is not easy to read, but she had worked for him for 8 years. She told me to trust her. He was pleased. She paused, then gently warned me to be careful. I looked up at her, finding concern in her eyes, and asked what I needed to be careful of. She said Roman Vitari is a complicated man. Powerful, brilliant, and loyal to those he trusts. She lowered her voice and said, his world is not like other people's worlds. The rules are different. The stakes are higher. Getting close to him means accepting things that someone with my background might find difficult. Someone with my background. Translation. Someone not born into the subtle violence of organized power. Someone who still believed the world operated according to laws, ethics, and clear boundaries between right and wrong. I said I understood, even though I was not sure I did, and I thanked her for the warning. She nodded and left, and I was alone with my thoughts until the elevator chimed again. 4 men emerged. All were broad-shouldered and thick-necked, wearing suits that looked uncomfortable on their muscular frames. They were union representatives clearly, but there was something else about them. A hardness in their eyes, a way of moving that suggested they were used to physical confrontation. I stood and gestured toward the waiting area, saying, "Gentlemen, Mr. Vitari will be with you shortly." I asked if I could offer them coffee. They settled into the chairs, declining refreshments with curt shakes of their heads. I informed Roman of their arrival through the intercom, then gathered my tablet and pen, steeling myself for whatever was about to happen. Roman emerged, his expression pleasant but his eyes sharp. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming," he said. He shook hands with each man, his grip firm, his body language radiating controlled confidence. He invited them in. They filed into his office, and I followed. I took a seat slightly apart from the main cluster of chairs, positioning myself where I could observe without being directly involved. Roman settled behind his desk, the massive piece of furniture giving him both physical and psychological dominance. "So," he said, steepling his fingers, his gaze moving from face to face, "we are here to discuss the issues at the Riverside construction site." The largest of the union men leaned forward, his expression aggressive. He said issues is one word for it. He claimed his guys had been getting pressured, told to rush work, skip safety protocols, and cut corners. By whom? Roman asked calmly. Your foreman, DeMarco, the man replied. His jaw tightened. He said they had filed formal complaints 3 times now, and nothing had changed. Roman said he saw and pulled a file from his desk, opening it to reveal what looked like detailed reports. He noted that these complaints were quite specific about times, dates, and witnesses. He looked up and said it was also quite convenient in their timing, coming right as they were negotiating the contract renewal. The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. The union representative's face darkened. He asked if Roman was calling his men liars. Roman calmly replied that he was noting the timing, and closed the file carefully. He added that he was also noting that DeMarco has been with Vitari Holdings for 15 years. 0 safety violations, 0 complaints, until 3 weeks ago. He said that was an interesting pattern. I watched, fascinated despite myself, as Roman methodically picked apart each complaint, revealing inconsistencies and convenient gaps in the allegations. He never raised his voice, never displayed anger. Instead, he used facts like surgical instruments, cutting away deception with precise efficiency. The largest man stood suddenly, his chair scraping back. He said they were done here. Sit down, Marcus, Roman said. His voice did not change in volume, but something shifted in it. Something cold and absolutely unyielding. He said, when I say we are done, we are done. For a moment, I thought the man would refuse. Violence seemed to shimmer in the air like heat waves. Then, slowly, Marcus sat down. Not because he wanted to, but because something in Roman's eyes made it clear that refusing was not actually an option. Here is what is going to happen, Roman continued, his tone conversational again. You are going to drop these manufactured complaints. I am going to pretend I do not know that Castellano put you up to this, trying to leverage labor issues to force me to sell him the Riverside property. Marcus's face went pale. In exchange, Roman said, I will increase the pension contribution by 3% and guarantee no layoffs through the end of next year. The contract renewal will be signed with these terms. He slid a document across the desk. Your men get better benefits and better security. All you have to do is stop being a pawn in someone else's game. I watched Marcus read the document and saw greed and fear war across his features. Roman waited patiently, a chess master who already knew how this would end. Marcus asked how they would know Castellano would not retaliate, the unspoken threat hanging in the air. Roman said it was because he was making clear to Castellano that they were under his protection now. Roman's smile did not reach his eyes as he added that Castellano, for all his ambitions, is not stupid enough to move against people he has claimed. The word claimed echoed in my head. The casual way Roman said it, like ownership was a simple fact of his existence. Like protection and control were 2 sides of the same coin. Marcus signed the document. The other men followed suit. Within 10 minutes, they were filing out of the office. Their aggression was replaced with a careful deference of people who knew they had just dodged a bullet they had not seen coming. When the elevator doors closed behind them, Roman finally looked at me and asked for my thoughts. I should have been horrified. I should have been already planning my resignation. Instead, I found myself analyzing what I had witnessed with an objectivity that probably said something concerning about my own moral boundaries. I told him he knew about Castellano before they walked in. He said you should always know your opponent's moves before they make them. He stood and moved to the windows. He said you should always give people a reason to choose you over whoever is threatening them. Carrot and stick, the foundation of negotiation. I told him that was not negotiation, and I trailed off, uncertain what word fit. I said that was business. He turned to face me and asked if I meant his business, the kind I would see more of if I stayed in this position. He said the question was whether I could handle it. I met his eyes, that same spark from yesterday igniting again. I told him he already knew I could, otherwise he would not have had me in that room. Something that might have been approval flickered across his face. He said perhaps, or perhaps he wanted to give me the chance to walk away now, before I was in too deep. I asked if that was what he wanted, for me to walk away. The question emerged before I could stop it, carrying implications far beyond the professional. Roman's eyes darkened, and the air between us suddenly felt charged with the same intensity as yesterday. He said quietly that what he wants and what is wise are often very different things. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression shifting. He said he needed to take the call, and that we would continue this conversation later. Dismissed again, I returned to my desk, my mind spinning. The morning's meeting had revealed several things. First, Roman's business operated in spaces where legal and illegal blurred until the distinction became meaningless. Second, he wielded power with surgical precision, using information and leverage like weapons. Third, he had wanted me to see this, to understand what working for him really meant. And fourth, most dangerously, none of it had scared me away. The rest of the morning passed in a flurry of calls and administrative tasks. I fielded questions from contractors, scheduled meetings, and managed the constant flow of information that seemed to pour through my desk. Around noon, Patricia appeared with a concerned expression. She said there was someone here to see Mr. Vitari, and she did not have an appointment. I asked for a name. Patricia's expression tightened. Isabella Castellano. It was the same last name Roman had mentioned in the meeting, not a coincidence. I asked if he knew she was here. Patricia said he knew, and he had said to send her in. Patricia lowered her voice and told me to be careful with this one. She said Isabella is not like other women in Roman's orbit. She is dangerous. I knocked on Roman's office door, entering at his acknowledgement. I told him Miss Castellano was here. He told me to send her in. His voice was carefully neutral, but I saw tension in the set of his shoulders. Isabella Castellano swept past me seconds later, bringing with her the scent of expensive perfume and the subtle threat of violence wrapped in designer clothing. She was beautiful, dark hair falling in perfect waves, olive skin, eyes like chips of ice. Her red dress was elegant, expensive, and cut to showcase a figure maintained through dedicated effort. She did not wait for an invitation, settling into the chair across from his desk with casual familiarity, saying it had been too long. Roman remained standing in a power position. He said he was not aware they had business to discuss. She replied that they did not. She just came socially. Her eyes flicked to me, still standing near the door. She asked who the new secretary was, noting that he had gone through 3 since Victoria left. The dismissal in her tone was clear. I was not a person to her, just another interchangeable piece of office furniture. Roman said Miss Chen is excellent at her job, and something in his tone made Isabella's eyes narrow. He said that would be all, Nora. I left, closing the door behind me, but I could not entirely block out their voices. Isabella's artificial and sharp laugh. Roman's measured and careful responses. The sound of her heels clicking across his floor as she presumably moved closer to him. I tried to focus on work, but irrational and unwelcome jealousy gnawed at my chest. They had history, clearly. She called him by his first name. She moved through his space like she belonged there, and she was beautiful in a way I would never be. Polished and dangerous, and perfectly suited to his world. 20 minutes later, Isabella emerged, her expression satisfied. She paused at my desk, looking me over with cold assessment. She offered a word of advice, calling me darling. Her smile was all teeth, no warmth. She told me not to get too comfortable. She said Roman does not keep secretaries long, and he certainly does not keep them for anything beyond typing and filing. She swept to the elevator, leaving me with a clear message. Whatever I thought was developing between Roman and me, I was deluding myself. Roman appeared in his doorway moments after the elevator closed, calling me into his office. I grabbed my tablet and followed him in. He closed the door behind us, something he rarely did for our interactions. He asked what she had said to me. I kept my voice level and said it was nothing important, just friendly advice about job security. He moved closer and said Isabella's advice is never friendly. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. He told me she came here to mark territory, to remind him of family connections and old alliances, and to see who I was. I asked why she would care who I was. He said because she is perceptive enough to recognize a threat when she sees one. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. I knew I should step back. I should remind him of professional boundaries. I should do any number of appropriate things. Instead, I heard myself ask, "Am I a threat?" Roman's jaw tightened. He said I was becoming a distraction he could not afford. I told him to fire me then. He roughly admitted that he did not want to fire me, and that was the problem. We stood there close enough to touch, the air crackling with tension. I could see his pulse beating in his throat. I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Every instinct screamed at me to close the distance, to see what would happen if I just leaned in. But his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He stepped back, putting professional distance between us again. He said he had a 2 o'clock meeting and to make sure he was not disturbed. I said of course, and fled to my desk with my heart hammering and my skin flushed. What was I doing? This was my boss, a man who operated outside the law, who wielded power through intimidation and leverage, who had women like Isabella Castellano in his orbit. But when he looked at me with that intensity, when tension sparked between us like electricity, I forgot all the reasons this was dangerous. I forgot everything except the feeling of being truly seen for the first time in my life. The afternoon crawled past. At 4:30, an envelope was delivered to my desk. Inside was an invitation to a charity gala next Saturday, along with a brief note in Roman's handwriting. It said the foundation required his attendance, and he needed someone he trusted to accompany him professionally. He noted that a dress would be provided, and signed it R. I stared at the invitation, understanding the subtext. He was asking me to attend a social event with him in front of the entire elite of the city, with people like Isabella Castellano. This was crossing a line, moving from professional into something else entirely. I should decline. I should maintain boundaries. I should protect myself from whatever complicated game was playing out between us. Instead, I found myself walking to his door, knocking softly. At his acknowledgement, I entered and simply said, "I accept." Roman looked up from his computer, something like satisfaction crossing his features. He said good, and that Patricia would coordinate the details. I should have left then, but instead I heard myself ask why me. I said he could take anyone to this event, someone from his world, someone who understands the rules. He stood up and moved around his desk toward me. He said that was exactly why. He said he was tired of people who understood the rules of his world, tired of relationships built on leverage and alliance. He stopped close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. He said I looked at him like he was a person, not a name or a position. He asked if I had any idea how rare that was. I softly replied that he was a person. A complicated one, maybe a dangerous one, definitely, but still just a person. He smiled without humor and said no one had called him that in a long time, Nora. The use of my first name sent warmth through my chest. I said I should get back to work. He agreed it was probably wise, but he did not move or step back. He just continued looking at me with that intensity that made breathing difficult. I left his office on shaky legs, settling back at my desk. I told myself I should quit. I should run from whatever was developing between us before it consumed me entirely. But even as the thought formed, I knew I would not. Because somewhere between yesterday's confrontation and today's charged moments, I had stopped being just his secretary. I was becoming something else. Something dangerous and thrilling and completely unprecedented in my carefully ordered life. And God help me, I wanted to see where it led. The week leading up to the gala passed in a blur of heightened awareness. Every interaction with Roman felt weighted, loaded with the unspoken tension that had been building between us since my first day. He found reasons to call me into his office for discussions that could have happened over email. I found myself adjusting my skirt when he looked at me, smoothing my hair, making small unconscious gestures that I only recognized after the fact. Wednesday brought another confrontation, this time over something trivial, a scheduling conflict I had to resolve without his direct input. He had been short with me, criticizing my decision-making in a tone that would have wounded me a week ago. Instead, I felt that familiar spark ignite. I told him he hired me to manage his schedule, which required making judgment calls. I said if he wanted someone who asked permission for every decision, he hired the wrong person. His eyes darkened with something that looked like desire. He said maybe he did, but he did not fire me. Instead, he dismissed me with a wave of his hand, and I caught him watching me walk away, his expression unreadable. Thursday. Patricia pulled me aside during my lunch break. We sat in a small executive break room, just the two of us with the door closed. She said without preamble that I was playing with fire. She said she had seen how he looked at me and how I looked at him. I did not bother denying it. I said I knew it was complicated. Complicated does not begin to cover it, she said. She stirred her coffee, choosing words carefully. She told me Roman's last serious relationship ended 3 years ago. Her name was Victoria. She was beautiful, from the right family, and understood his world. I asked what happened. She said Victoria tried to use him and passed information to a rival family, thinking she could play both sides. Patricia's expression hardened. She said Roman found out. She did not know exactly what happened after that, but Victoria left the city and never came back. And Roman swore he would never let anyone close enough to hurt him again. The warning was clear. Roman did not just guard his heart. He had locked it away entirely. And I was foolish to think I could be different. I quietly told her I was not trying to hurt him. She said she did not think I was, but intentions do not matter much in his world. Results do. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. She told me to just be careful. Roman is capable of great loyalty and great ruthlessness, and sometimes it is hard to tell which side you are on until it is too late. Friday afternoon, a delivery arrived. Not a shopping bag this time, but 3 large garment boxes with the logo of the city's most exclusive formal wear boutique. I signed for them, carrying the boxes into the small private bathroom near my desk. Inside the first box was an evening gown that took my breath away. Deep emerald green silk that would complement my dark hair, cut to be both elegant and subtly sensual. The second box held matching shoes, delicate strappy things that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The third held a jewelry box containing diamond earrings and a matching bracelet that caught the light like captured stars. A card rested on top of the jewelry. It read, "For tomorrow night." "Wear your hair down, R." I stared at the treasures laid out before me, understanding what they represented. Roman was dressing me, shaping me to fit into his world. I should have been offended by the presumption. Instead, I found myself imagining his reaction when he saw me in this dress, with these diamonds catching light against my skin. I was in dangerous territory. I knew it, but I could not seem to make myself care. Saturday arrived with unusual warmth for the season. I spent the morning at a salon Patricia had recommended, letting professionals shape my hair into soft waves that cascaded down my back. They applied makeup that enhanced without overwhelming, and pampered my hands and feet until they were smooth and polished. The woman in the mirror when they finished looked like someone else. Someone sophisticated and confident, someone who belonged in Roman's world. I tried to reconcile her with the girl who had taken this job just 2 weeks ago, and found the distance unsettling. A car arrived at my apartment at 6 o'clock. Not Roman's usual driver, but a different man who introduced himself as Marcus and helped me into the back of a sleek black sedan. The drive to Roman's building took 15 minutes through early evening traffic. Marcus escorted me through a private entrance I had never used before, past security who nodded respectfully, and into a private elevator that required a key card to access. We rose to the top floor, the penthouse level that I had known existed but had never seen. The elevator opened directly into Roman's home. I stepped into a space that was somehow both exactly what I had expected and completely surprising. The main living area was all floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Modern furniture in blacks and grays, and artwork that was probably worth millions. But there were personal touches too. Books that looked actually read. A vintage chess set positioned mid-game. Photographs on a side table showing a younger Roman with people I assumed were family. Marcus told me he would be down in a moment, gesturing to the expansive leather sofa. He asked if he could bring me anything, and I said I was fine, thank you. He nodded and disappeared, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. I moved to the windows, looking out at the city sprawling below. How many times had I looked up at buildings like this from street level, never imagining I would stand inside one? "You wore your hair down," a voice said. I turned to find Roman descending the stairs from what must be the second floor. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. The traditional black and white somehow making him look even more dangerous, more controlled, and more completely out of my league. I managed to keep my voice steady despite the way my pulse jumped, and told him he had asked me to. His eyes moved over me slowly, taking in every detail of the dress, the diamonds, and the carefully styled hair. When his gaze finally returned to mine, the intensity in it stole my breath. "You are beautiful," he said quietly, almost reluctantly, like he had not meant to say it aloud. I corrected him, saying the dress is beautiful, the diamonds are beautiful, and I am just the mannequin. He crossed the space between us in 3 strides, stopping close enough that I could smell his cologne and feel the heat radiating from his body. He said no. The dress and diamonds are just decoration. He told me I was what made them worth looking at. My heart hammered against my ribs. We stood there too close, the city lights glittering behind us, the air crackling with tension that had been building for 2 weeks. "Roman," I started, though I was not sure what I meant to say. "We should go," he said, stepping back and offering his arm with a formal courtesy that felt like a shield against whatever had almost happened. "The car is waiting." I took his arm, letting him guide me to the elevator. The ride down was silent, heavy with unspoken words. Marcus held the car door, and I slid into the back seat, Roman settling beside me with careful distance between us. The gala was being held at one of the city's most historic hotels. All marble columns and crystal chandeliers. We joined the stream of formally dressed guests making their way inside. I felt eyes turn toward us, assessing, calculating, wondering who I was and what I meant to Roman Vitari. "Ignore them," Roman murmured near my ear. "They are carrion birds looking for weakness to exploit." "Comforting," I replied, and felt rather than saw his smile. Inside, the ballroom was stunning. Soaring ceilings, massive chandeliers, tables draped in white linen and set with more silverware than any meal could possibly require. A small orchestra played in one corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and delicate hors d'oeuvre. Roman's hand settled at the small of my back as he guided me through the crowd, stopping occasionally to exchange greetings with people whose names I recognized from news articles and society pages. He introduced me simply as his assistant, Nora Chen, but something in the way he said it, in the possessive pressure of his hand against my back, suggested I was more than that. "Roman, darling." Isabella Castellano materialized from the crowd. She was resplendent in a red dress that probably cost more than my car. Her eyes raked over me with cold assessment. She said she saw he brought his secretary and called it practical. Roman's voice was coolly polite as he greeted her. She turned her attention fully to me and said, "That is a lovely dress, dear." She asked if Roman picked it out for me. The condescension was subtle but clear. I smiled, channeling every ounce of confidence the dress and diamonds gave me. I said he has excellent taste in clothing, certainly. Isabella's smile was all edges. She asked me what one does at a charity gala when one is not actually part of the social circle. She said it must be terribly boring for me. I replied evenly that I was finding it educational. I said I was learning a lot about the difference between class and breeding. Roman's hand tightened slightly against my back. Warning or approval, I could not tell. Isabella's eyes narrowed dangerously. She called it delightfully direct, and told Roman he found someone with a spine. She said they would see how long that lasts. She drifted away, leaving tension in her wake. Roman quietly told me I did not have to engage with her. I looked up at him and said she engaged with me first, and I was not going to stand there and take being insulted, even if it cost me this job. Something flickered in his eyes. He said it would not cost me my job, but it might cost me peace. He noted that Isabella does not forget slights. I told him then we have something in common. He actually smiled then, genuine warmth breaking through his usual control. "Come on," he said, "let's get champagne, and I will introduce you to people who will not immediately try to destroy you." The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Roman stayed close, his hand never leaving the small of my back. His attention split between conversations and monitoring me with an intensity I felt even when he was not looking directly at me. I met the mayor, who was surprisingly charming. I met a federal judge who seemed nervous around Roman, despite outranking him in every legal sense. I met several business leaders who spoke in careful euphemisms about mutual interests and ongoing partnerships. And through it all, I felt Roman's presence like a physical force, the way he commanded space without trying. The way people deferred to him, not out of respect, but out of something closer to fear. The way his hand would occasionally brush mine, sending electricity up my arm. Dinner was announced, and we found our assigned table near the front of the room. I recognized several of our table mates from earlier introductions, business associates of Romans, along with their wives or dates. The conversation flowed easily around topics both benign and weighted with subtext I was beginning to understand. Midway through the main course, a man approached our table, older perhaps 60, with silver hair and a smile that did not reach his eyes. He nodded to Roman with careful respect, saying, "Vitari, I wondered if you would be here tonight." Castellano Roman's voice had gone cold. He said he was not aware Castellano had been invited. Castellano, Isabella's father, presumably the man Roman had mentioned during the union meeting, the one who had been trying to force him to sell property. Castellano casually mentioned that he and the foundation go way back and that he is a major donor. Castellano's eyes moved to me, lingering with uncomfortable intensity. He asked who this lovely creature was. Roman said I was his assistant, and his hand found mine under the table, lacing our fingers together in a grip that was both possessive and reassuring. Miss Chen, charming Castellano's smile widened. He asked me how I found working for our friend Roman, saying he can be quite demanding. I replied that I found it rewarding, feeling Roman's thumb stroke across my knuckles. I said Mr. Vitari has high standards, but he also rewards excellence. Castellano said he was sure he does, the innuendo clear. He said he would not interrupt our evening further. He told Roman they should talk soon about the riverside property, claiming Roman would find his latest offer very reasonable. Roman stated he was not selling. Not yet. Castellano's smile never wavered. He said circumstances change, people change, priorities shift, and he was a patient man. He walked away, leaving tension crackling in his wake. Under the table, Roman's grip on my hand tightened until it was almost painful. I whispered for him to breathe and felt some of the tension leave his body. He barely audibly told me Castellano was threatening him. He said that was a reminder that Castellano knows about me now, that I am a potential pressure point. I told Roman I was not afraid of him. "You should be," Roman replied. He said these people do not play by normal rules, and they will use anyone or hurt anyone to get what they want. I turned in my seat slightly, meeting his eyes. I told him then I guess I am in good company, because neither does he. His expression shifted, something raw and unguarded flashing across his features. He said I should be running from him, not sitting here holding his hand. Probably. I squeezed his fingers gently, but I have never been very good at doing what I should. The orchestra began playing, couples moving to the dance floor. Roman stood, tugging me gently to my feet, and told me to dance with him. It was not a question. I let him lead me to the floor, hyper-aware of every eye watching us, of Isabella's cold glare from across the room, and of Castellano's knowing smirk. But none of it mattered when Roman pulled me into proper dance position, one hand at my waist, the other holding mine as we began to move to the music. I admitted I was not very good at this, following his lead. He quietly told me I was doing fine, and to just let him lead. We moved together, closer than the formal dance required. His hand warm against my back, my fingers resting on his shoulder. Around us, the world faded. The glittering crowd, the political maneuvering, the dangerous games. For these few minutes, there was only music and movement, and the feeling of being exactly where I belonged. Nora, my name was a caress. He said this thing between us is dangerous. He said I knew I could get hurt badly, that these people would see me as leverage against him. I told him I knew that too. He asked why I was still here then. I looked up at him, at the conflict clear in his eyes, and told him the simple truth. Because when I am with you, I feel alive in a way I never have before. Because you see me, really see me, not just what I can do for you. And because I think maybe you need someone who sees you too. Not just the power and the name and the empire. His jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he might pull away. Instead, he drew me closer until we were moving as one, until I could feel his heartbeat against mine. "You are going to ruin me," he murmured against my hair. "Or save you," I replied, noting the jury was still out. He actually laughed, a quiet sound that rumbled through his chest. He said I was infuriatingly optimistic for someone who has seen what I have seen of his world. I told him someone has to balance out his brooding cynicism. We danced through 2 more songs, holding each other like the world beyond this moment did not exist. But eventually, the music ended, reality returning with the polite applause of the crowd. Roman led me back to our table. But before we could sit, Castellano appeared again, this time with Isabella on his arm. He insisted Roman let him steal his lovely assistant for a dance, saying it was only fair after Roman monopolized me all evening. Everything in me screamed to refuse. Roman's hand tightened on mine, his body tensing. But we were surrounded by the city's elite. Cameras were discreetly capturing moments for society pages. Refusing would cause a scene and would show weakness. Roman carefully said, of course, but I heard the rage beneath his controlled voice. I met his eyes, seeing the conflict there, the barely restrained violence. I quietly told Roman it was fine, and then let Castellano lead me to the dance floor. Up close, he smelled of expensive cologne and something sour underneath. His hand on my waist was too familiar, his grip on my hand too tight. We began to move, and I focused on maintaining appropriate distance. Castellano conversationally told me I was playing a dangerous game getting involved with Roman Vitari, but his eyes were cold. I told him I was not involved with Roman, I was his assistant. Castellano smiled predatorily and said he had seen how Roman looks at me. Like I am something precious he wants to lock away and protect. He said Roman has always had that weakness, caring too much about the few people he lets close, and it makes him vulnerable. I stated I was sure I did not know what he meant. Castellano said of course not. His hand on my waist shifted lower, too familiar. He offered some friendly advice, saying Roman's world is not kind to innocents. He mentioned that the last woman Roman cared about ended up leaving the city with a significant limp and no desire to ever return. He asked if that was really the future I wanted. Victoria, Patricia's story about Roman's ex. Fear clawed at my throat, but I kept my expression neutral. I thanked him for the concern, but said I could take care of myself. He tightened his grip painfully and asked if I really could, because from where he was standing, I was just another piece on the board, and Roman would sacrifice me the moment it was strategically advantageous. The music ended. I pulled away from him, stepping back. I told him the only person trying to use me as a piece on the board was him, Mr. Castellano, and I was not interested in playing. I walked away before he could respond, heading not back to our table, but toward the terrace doors. I needed air, needed space to process the fear Castellano had deliberately kindled. Outside, the night air was cool against my flushed skin. I leaned against the balustrade, looking out at the city lights. He threatened you, Roman's voice came from behind me. I had not heard him approach, but I was not surprised he had followed. I said he tried to scare me. Roman asked if it worked. I turned to face him. He stood in shadow, his expression unreadable, tension radiating from every line of his body. I asked if it should have. He stepped into the light spilling from the ballroom and said yes. He told me everything Castellano said is true, Nora. He said his world is violent and dangerous. People he cares about get hurt, and he was not sure he was good enough to resist using me the way Castellano suggested. I told him then let me make that decision. I closed the distance between us, placing my hand on his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath my palm. I told him to stop trying to protect me from him. I said I was not a child, I was not stupid. I see exactly what he is, and I am still here. He argued that I was only seeing what he let me see. The business meetings, the negotiations. He said I had not seen the rest. The violence, the things he had done to maintain power. I told him to show me then, to trust me enough to see all of it. He grabbed my wrist, his grip firm but not painful. He told me I did not know what I was asking. I said I knew exactly what I was asking. I asked him to stop treating me like I was fragile, to stop deciding what I could handle, and to let me in. We stood there locked in silent battle, his eyes searching mine for something I hoped he would find. Around us, the night wrapped close, the sounds of the gala a distant murmur. Finally, he spoke. "Come with me tomorrow," he said. He had business to conduct, the kind he normally hides from people like me. He asked if I really wanted to see his world, and said he would show me. I said all right. He warned I might not like what I see. I did not look away. I told him to show me anyway. His thumb stroked across my racing pulse. He said I was either very brave or very foolish. I asked if I could be both. The corner of his mouth lifted in something that was not quite a smile. He said we should go back inside. People will talk. I told him to let them. Nora. My name was a warning and a caress. He said I was making this very difficult. Good, I replied. You deserve to be challenged. He released my wrist but did not step back. We stood close enough to kiss. Close enough that I could see the conflict warring in his eyes. Want versus wisdom. Desire versus duty. Tomorrow, he said finally. He would send a car at 10 o'clock. He told me to wear jeans and boots, because where we were going, the dress would not help. I said I would be ready. We returned to the ballroom together, his hand once again at the small of my back, branding me as his in front of everyone watching. Isabella's eyes followed us with cold calculation. Castellano's smile was knowing and predatory, but I did not care, because tomorrow Roman would show me the truth. The darkness he had been protecting me from, and then I would finally understand exactly what I was getting myself into. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I felt only anticipation. Whatever came next, I was ready for it. The black SUV arrived at exactly 10 o'clock, Marcus at the wheel again. I climbed into the back, wearing my most worn jeans, practical boots, and a leather jacket I had owned since college. Roman sat in the far corner, dressed similarly down to the dark jeans, and fitted black Henley that revealed arms more muscular than his suit suggested. I said good morning and settled into the seat, noting the tension in his posture. Morning, he said, without looking at me. His gaze fixed on something outside the window. He said it was my last chance to change my mind. I told him I was not changing my mind. He nodded once, and we pulled into traffic. The drive took us away from the gleaming downtown towers through neighborhoods that grew progressively more industrial. Warehouses replaced office buildings. Chain-link fences lined empty lots. The few people on the streets had the hard look of those who had learned to survive in places where law enforcement was more rumor than reality. We stopped at a large warehouse complex surrounded by razor wire fencing. Security guards, Roman's men clearly, opened gates to let us through. Marcus parked near a loading dock where several other vehicles were already present. Stay close to me, Roman said as we exited the vehicle. Do not speak unless I tell you to. These men respect strength, not kindness. I nodded, following him into the warehouse. Inside, the space was cavernous and dimly lit. Shipping containers were stacked along one wall. A group of men stood near the center, surrounding something I could not see clearly. They parted as Roman approached, revealing a man kneeling on the concrete floor, hands bound behind his back, blood streaming from his nose. My stomach turned, but I kept my expression neutral. Mr. Vitari, one of Roman's men, stepped forward. He said the man finally admitted it. He had been skimming for 6 months, about $40,000 total. Roman circled the kneeling man slowly, his movements predatory. Tommy, we have known each other a long time, haven't we? Roman, please. The man's voice was thick with fear and blood. I can explain. Roman's voice was conversational, almost friendly, as he said he was sure Tommy could. Roman listed his sympathetic circumstances. A gambling problem, a wife who left him, a daughter needing surgery he could not afford. Tommy sobbed that he was going to pay it back. Roman stopped in front of him. He asked if Tommy was really going to pay it back, or if he was going to keep stealing until Roman noticed, and then disappear like the coward he was. The casual cruelty in his tone made my skin prickle. This was the Roman that Castellano had referenced, the dangerous man beneath the polished exterior. Tommy begged, crying now, saying he would do anything and work it off. Roman held up a hand, silencing him. He turned to his men and asked exactly how much was taken. The man replied $42,000, give or take. Roman ordered him to double it, $84,000. He said that is what he owes now. Roman looked down at the kneeling man. He said Tommy was going to work for him until it was paid off, every dollar accounted for. He warned that if Tommy stole even a penny more, if he ran, or if he even thought about betraying him again. He did not finish the threat. He did not need to. The implications were crystal clear. Tommy collapsed forward, sobbing his thanks repeatedly. Roman ordered his men to get him out of there and walked away, heading toward an office at the back of the warehouse. I followed, feeling the eyes of every man in the room on me. Inside the office, Roman moved to a wall safe, spinning the combination with practiced ease. He pulled out several thick envelopes, setting them on the desk. He noted that was not what I expected. It was not a question. I told him he was merciful and that Tommy thought Roman would kill him. Roman said he considered it. His tone was matter of fact. He explained that theft is usually punishable by death in his organization. But Tommy has 3 kids and a sick daughter. Killing him would have been satisfying, but counterproductive. I stated that so he would just work him like a slave instead. His eyes snapped to mine, sharp with warning. He asked if I would prefer he put a bullet in his head, because he could still arrange that. No, I held his gaze. I said I was just noting that mercy in his world comes with strings attached. He said everything in his world comes with strings attached. He gestured to the envelopes on the desk, saying this included protection money from businesses in the warehouse district. They pay him monthly, and in return, no one bothers them. No robberies. No vandalism, no problems with the unions or city inspectors. Extortion, I said. Protection, he countered. The police cannot keep these businesses safe. He can. He opened one envelope, rifling through the cash inside. He said some call it a shakedown, but he calls it providing a service the city refuses to provide. I moved closer, looking at the stacks of bills. Hundreds, mostly. Thousands of dollars in each envelope. I asked what happens if they refuse to pay. He said then they do not receive protection, and usually within a week or 2, they change their minds. His smile was cold as he noted how funny it is a few broken windows and a robbery can shift someone's perspective on the value of security. I accused him of breaking their windows to prove they need him. He said he does not have to, because there are plenty of people willing to do that for free. He just makes sure his clients do not experience it. The rationalization was smooth and practiced. I could see how people convinced themselves this was acceptable, how Roman himself had woven a narrative where he was providing legitimate service rather than running a protection racket. I met his eyes and asked if this was what he wanted to show me. The reality of how he maintains power. He gathered the envelopes, returning them to the safe. He said part of it, yes, but there was more. He told me this is who he is, Nora. Not the man in the tuxedo at charity galas. He is someone who takes money through threat of violence, someone who has people beaten for stealing, someone who operates outside the law because the law is for people with less power than he has. I should have been disgusted. I should have been planning my exit from his world, from this job, from whatever was developing between us. Instead, I found myself analyzing it clinically, separating the man from his actions. I asked why he wanted me to see this. He roughly admitted he was tired of me looking at him like he was a good man. He said he was not. He had done terrible things, and he would do more terrible things. He stated that if I was going to be in his life in any capacity, I needed to understand that. I repeated his words, in your life, not just your employee. His jaw tightened. He said I was already more than his employee. He knew it, I knew it, and everyone at that gala last night knew it. And that scares you, I said. He moved closer, backing me against the desk. He said it terrifies him, because people he cares about become targets. Vulnerabilities and weaknesses that enemies exploit, like Victoria. His expression shuddered. He asked who told me about her. I said Patricia mentioned her, and so did Castellano. I held his gaze despite the dangerous edge that had entered his eyes, and I asked what happened to her. For a long moment, I thought he would not answer. Then he sighed, some of the tension leaving his body. He said Victoria was smart, beautiful, and from the right family. They were together for 2 years, and he thought he loved her. His voice was flat and emotionless. He said it turns out she was passing information to the Castellano family. Everything he told her, every plan, every vulnerability. She was a plant from the beginning. I asked what he did to her. He said he exposed her to her own family, letting them know she had been caught betraying them by getting sloppy and letting emotion cloud her judgment. The Castellanos dealt with her internally. His smile was bitter. He said the last he heard, she was in Europe, living under a new name with a permanent limp and a healthy fear of crossing anyone with power. I asked if he loved her. He said he thought he did, but now he was not sure he even knew her well enough to love her. He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with surprising gentleness. He told me that is why this terrifies him. With me, he does not know what is real and what is just mutual attraction mixed with adrenaline and bad decisions. I said maybe it does not have to be one or the other. Maybe it is both. Maybe, he replied, his thumb tracing my jawline. But if he lets himself care about me, really care, and I turn out to be another Victoria, it would break him. I told him I am not her, he said to prove it. The challenge hung between us. I understood what he was asking. Trust had to be earned in his world, demonstrated through action rather than words. And I had no proof to offer except my presence here, my willingness to see the darkness and not run. I quietly told him I will. I asked for time and said I would prove it. His phone buzzed, breaking the moment. He checked it, his expression darkening. He said we needed to go. There was a problem at the docks. We returned to the SUV, Marcus already having the engine running. The drive to the waterfront took 20 minutes, tension thick in the vehicle. Roman made several calls, his voice clipped and angry, though he kept the details vague. The docks were a maze of shipping containers and cranes, the air thick with salt and diesel. Marcus navigated to a section that looked abandoned, parking near a warehouse with broken windows and graffiti-covered walls. Stay in the car, Roman's tone brooked no argument. He said this was different. This was dangerous even for him. He ordered me to stay here, or Marcus would drive me home right now. I nodded reluctantly, watching him exit the vehicle and disappear into the warehouse with 4 of his men. Marcus remained behind the wheel, his attention fixed on the building, his hand resting on what I realized was a gun in a shoulder holster. Minutes crawled past. 5, 10. I strained to hear anything over the ambient sounds of the docks, but the warehouse remained silent. Then gunfire erupted. 3 shots in rapid succession, the sound sharp even through the SUV's heavy doors. Marcus swore, reaching for his phone. More shots, shouting, the sounds of chaos. The warehouse door burst open and Roman's men emerged, half carrying someone between them. Roman brought up the rear, his shirt torn and blood on his knuckles, but moving under his own power. Marcus was out of the vehicle instantly, opening the back door. They loaded the injured man into the 3rd row of seats. I could see now it was one of Roman's guards, blood soaking through his shoulder. Roman climbed in beside me, his breathing harsh, and yelled for Marcus to drive now. Marcus did not need to be told twice. We peeled away from the docks as sirens began wailing in the distance. I tried to keep my voice steady and ask what happened. Roman pulled out his phone, making another call. He said it was an ambush. The Castellanos. They were waiting for them. Someone tipped them off about the shipment coming in today. The implication was clear. He had a leak in his organization. Someone close enough to know his schedule, his shipments, his movements. The injured man groaned from the back seat, and I turned to look at him. He was young, maybe 30, his face pale with blood loss. I said he needs a hospital. Roman was still on his phone coordinating something. He said they could not. Gunshot wounds get reported. We have a doctor who handles this. I said he could die before we get there. Roman's voice was flat. He said then he'd job. He knew the risks. The callousness shocked me into action. I unbuckled my seatbelt, climbing into the back row despite Marcus's protest. The injured man's eyes were unfocused, his breathing shallow. I asked for his name, pressing my hands against his shoulder to slow the bleeding. Marco, the word came out weak. Marco Santino. I told Marco to stay with me and that he was going to be fine. I looked at Roman and asked how far to this doctor. 10 minutes, he said. I told him Marco does not have 10 minutes. I ordered them to pull over now. Roman warned me to sit down. I shouted to pull over or he bleeds out in our car. It was his choice. Something in my tone must have convinced him. He ordered Marcus to stop at a gas station we were passing. While Roman went inside to buy supplies, I kept pressure on Marco's wound, talking to him to keep him conscious. Roman returned with a first aid kit. I used it to pack the wound properly, applying pressure bandages that would hold until we reached the doctor. It was not perfect medical care, but it would keep him alive. When we finally arrived at an unmarked building in an industrial area, a gray-haired man was waiting. He helped us get Marco inside into what looked like a well-equipped medical suite, hidden behind the facade of a closed factory. The doctor examined Marco and said he would live. He had lost a lot of blood, but the bullet went through clean. The doctor said he would keep him there tonight and make sure there was no infection. Outside, Roman leaned against the SUV, his face drawn with exhaustion and anger. I approached him carefully, unsure what to say. He did not look at me when he said I saved his life. He noted Marco had been with him for 5 years and has a wife and a baby daughter. He finally turned to face me and said, "Thank you." I told him he should not have to thank me for basic human decency. He replied that in his world, basic human decency is often in short supply. He straightened, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. He called me full of surprises. I explained that I had worked as an EMT during college trauma response training. I had not thought about those days in years. The summer I spent riding ambulances and learning to handle emergencies. I guessed it came back when I needed it. He said I still stayed calm under pressure and challenged him when he was being cold. His eyes searched mine. He said I was not what he expected when he hired me. I asked what he expected. He smiled wryly and said someone competent but forgettable. Someone who would manage his schedule and stay invisible. Instead, he got someone who argues with him, challenges his decisions, and makes him question choices he had made for years. I asked if that was a bad thing. He said he did not know yet. He pushed off from the SUV and said, "Come on," he would take me home. The drive back to my apartment was quiet, both of us processing the day's events. When we pulled up to my building, Roman walked me to my door despite my protests. He told me to take the day off tomorrow. After today I had earned it, I said I was fine. His hand came up, cupping my cheek with unexpected tenderness. "Take the day," he said. "That is an order." Before I could respond, he leaned in and pressed his lips to my forehead. A gesture somehow more intimate than a kiss. Then he was gone, leaving me standing in my doorway with my heart racing and my world fundamentally shifted. I had seen Roman's darkness today, the violence, the moral compromises, the casual acceptance of brutality. And instead of running, I had stayed. I had helped. I had proven myself in his world. The question was, what came next? Monday, I defied Roman's order and went to work. His expression when I walked in, at 8:30, was a mixture of exasperation and something that looked like pride. Over the following weeks, I became more integrated into his world. He stopped hiding the nature of his business, letting me sit in on meetings that ranged from legitimate real estate deals to negotiations that were clearly anything but legal. I learned the language of his empire, the euphemisms, the unspoken rules, the careful dance of power and violence. Isabella Castellano became a recurring problem. She appeared at the office unannounced, called at odd hours, and made it clear she viewed me as temporary and disposable. But Roman never entertained her advances, never gave her the attention she so obviously craved. Patricia explained one afternoon that she was trying to create division. The Castellanos wanted Roman rattled and off balance. I was the easiest target. I told Patricia to let them try. I had grown bolder in my time with Roman, more confident in my place in his world. One evening, Roman invited me to his penthouse for dinner. Not business, just us. I arrived to find the space transformed with candles, soft music, and the city lights glittering beyond the windows. He poured wine and we ate pasta he had cooked himself. He said he had been thinking about us, about what this is. I asked what he thinks it is. I suggested dangerous, complicated, and probably a terrible idea. He set down his fork, meeting my eyes, and added, completely inevitable. Inevitable. He stood, moving around the table to pull me to my feet. He said from the moment I walked into his office in that navy skirt, challenging him with those eyes, he was lost. He just did not want to admit it. His kiss was everything I had imagined and more. Claiming and possessive, but also surprisingly tender. We moved to the couch, then to the bedroom, the night unfolding in ways that felt both new and strangely familiar. Later, lying in his arms with the city spread beneath us, he murmured against my hair that I had ruined him for anyone else. "Good," I replied, and felt his chest rumble with laughter. But happiness in Roman's world was never simple. 2 weeks later, everything changed. I was leaving work late, documents for the morning meeting tucked in my bag. The parking garage was mostly empty, my footsteps echoing off concrete. I did not hear them approach until hands grabbed me. A cloth covered my mouth and nose. A chemical smell. Darkness. I woke in a basement, bound to a chair, head pounding. Across from me sat Castellano himself, Isabella standing behind him like a vengeful shadow. Castellano pleasantly noted I was finally awake. He said we had so much to discuss, starting with exactly how much I meant to Roman Vitari. The ransom call came to Roman at 3 a.m. I knew because he told me later, his voice raw with an emotion I had never heard from him before: fear. What I experienced in that basement was terror unlike anything I had known. Castellano's questions, Isabella's cold enjoyment of my situation, the hours that stretched with no sense of time or hope. But I did not break. I did not give them the information they wanted about Roman's operations, his plans, or his vulnerabilities. Every time they pressured me, I thought about Marco bleeding in the SUV. I thought about the way Roman had looked at me in his office, and about the choice I had made to stay in his world. Roman came for me with an army. The assault was swift, brutal, and efficient. Gunfire, shouting, chaos. Then his hands were on my face, checking for injuries, his voice breaking as he whispered my name. The aftermath was complicated. Castellano disappeared permanently, I suspected, though Roman never confirmed it. Isabella fled the city. Several members of their organization either switched allegiance to Roman or vanished. Roman said he should never have let me in, the night I returned to his penthouse, both of us battered but alive. He said this is why he does not let people close. I took his hand and told him it was too late. I was already close, and he could not scare me away now. 6 months later, Roman made an announcement that shocked the city's underworld. He was establishing a foundation, legitimately this time, to provide scholarships and opportunities for young people trapped in neighborhoods controlled by organized crime. He told me I did this as we reviewed the paperwork. I corrected him, saying we did this. Together, the foundation grew. By the second anniversary of my kidnapping, which we never spoke about but never forgot, we had helped over 100 kids escape the cycle of violence and poverty. 2 years later, at 27, I stood in Roman's office, our office now, reviewing applications for the next scholarship class. Roman entered, closing the door behind him. He asked if I remembered the first time he called me into this office and criticized my skirt. I smiled, adjusting the hem of the considerably shorter skirt I wore now, chosen deliberately to provoke exactly the reaction I got. His eyes darkening with desire mixed with that possessive edge that still made my pulse race. He crossed the room, pulling me into his arms, and said he was an idiot trying to push me away before he admitted how much he wanted me close. I agreed he was, but noted I forgave him. He knelt then suddenly, pulling a small box from his pocket. He said, "Nora Chen, you came into my life and changed everything. You made me want to be better, do better, and build something beyond fear and power. Marry me, be my partner in everything." I looked at him. This dangerous, complicated, beautiful man who had shown me his darkest parts and trusted me not to run, who had built something meaningful from an empire of shadows. I said simply, yes. Always, yes. He stood, sliding the ring onto my finger, kissing me with the same intensity as that first time in his penthouse. Outside, the city spread before us, full of possibilities. We had started with a skirt and a challenge, built something from darkness and desire, and somehow impossibly found light. "I love you," he murmured against my lips. "I know," I replied. "You always have. You just needed someone brave enough to see it." And in the office where our story began, with the city as our witness, we began the next chapter together.